In that silent night when everything seemed impossible, a promise echoed in the heart of a woman already marked by time. Sarah, wife of Abraham, heard that she would be a mother, even when hope seemed lost. This news not only changed the course of her life, but became a symbol of faith and perseverance for generations. Welcome to Bible in Colors, where sacred stories come alive and gain meaning for your everyday life. Today, you will dive into the journey of Sarah, a woman who challenged human logic and became a reference of trust in God, even in the face of the improbable. Get ready to discover historical, cultural, and spiritual details that reveal not only the strength of a woman, but the faithfulness of a God who fulfills what he promises, even when everything seems late. Sarah's story begins in a society that valued offspring above all. Being a mother was a sign of blessing, honor, and continuity. However, Sarah, even married to Abraham, a man of faith and respect, bore the weight of barrenness. Years went by, and with each cycle, hope seemed to fade a little more. The looks of other women, the whispers of the neighborhood, and the silence of her own womb became deep pains, difficult to put into words. Still, Sarah remained by Abraham's side, sharing dreams, challenges, and faith in a God who, for them, was still a mystery in the making. Sarah and Abraham's nomadic life was marked by constant displacements, tents set up and taken down, landscapes changing with each season. They left behind their homeland, Ur of the Chaldeans, obeying a call that promised a new land, numerous descendants, and countless blessings. The journey, however, was full of uncertainties, hunger, conflicts, and tough decisions. At each stop, Sarah faced the challenge of trusting in unseen promises, of keeping hope alive even when everything around suggested otherwise. Time went by, and God's promise seemed ever more distant. Sarah, already elderly, saw her body age, her strength wane, and the possibility of being a mother become almost an illusion. Even so, God visited Abraham and renewed the promise. Sarah, your wife, will bear a son. Sarah's laughter, a mix of disbelief and longing, echoed in the tent. She herself said, "After I am worn out and my Lord is old, will I now have this pleasure?" But God replied, "Is anything too hard for the Lord?" In this dialogue, the name Isaac is born, meaning he laughs, reminding us that even the impossible can become a reason for joy when God intervenes. Sarah's journey is marked by ups and downs, moments of faith and doubt, waiting and acting. In her humanity, she tried to help God fulfill the promise by giving her servant Hagar to Abraham, generating conflicts and pains that crossed generations. But God, in his faithfulness, did not give up on Sarah. He visited her, restored her dignity, and fulfilled what he had promised. Isaac's birth was not just the end of a wait, but the beginning of a new story, where grace surpasses logic and hope is reborn even at the end of the road. Sarah's story is an invitation to reflection. How many times do we give up on dreams because time seems to have passed? In which areas of our lives do we need to rediscover hope and trust that God can still act? Sarah teaches us that faith is not the absence of doubts, but the courage to keep walking, even when we see no way out. Her life is a testimony that God does not forget his promises, and that for him, it is never too late. If this introduction touched your heart and awakened the desire to learn more about Sarah's faith and perseverance, share this video with someone who needs hope. Write in the comments which promise you hope to see fulfilled, and subscribe to Bible in Colors so you won't miss the next episodes. Together, let's discover how the story of one woman can transform generations and rekindle faith in times of waiting. Sarah's story unfolds in a time and place profoundly different from the contemporary world, but whose human dilemmas still echo today. Sarah lived during the second millennium before Christ, among the ancient cultures of the Fertile Crescent, a region that includes lands between Egypt and Mesopotamia. The historical context was marked by powerful city-states, caravan trade, tribal conflicts, and a religiosity that permeated every aspect of life. Abraham and Sarah's people were nomads, used to setting up and taking down tents, crossing deserts, and depending on the seasons to survive. Family was the center of existence, and offspring was seen as the greatest blessing, a guarantee of continuity and protection amid the uncertainties of tomorrow. Sarah, whose original name was Sarai, was born in Ur of the Chaldeans, one of the most advanced cities of her time, known for its ziggurats, bustling markets, and cultural wealth. She left behind the relative comfort of her homeland to follow Abraham on a journey of faith into the unknown. This decision required courage and detachment, as it meant leaving behind everything familiar and safe to trust in an invisible promise. God's call to Abraham, recorded in Genesis 12, was also a call to Sarah. Leave your country, your people, and your father's household and go to the land I will show you. Thus, she became a pilgrim, a foreigner in strange lands, learning to depend daily on divine provision. The culture Sarah was part of was deeply patriarchal, and women were valued mainly for their ability to bear children. Barrenness was a source of shame, social exclusion, and even spiritual questioning. Sarah felt the weight of this stigma, facing looks of contempt, malicious comments, and her own internal struggle between faith and discouragement. Even so, her story reveals a resilient woman, able to laugh at her own pain and reinvent herself in the face of adversity. Her relationship with Abraham was marked by complicity, but also by challenges, such as when, fearing for his own life, Abraham asked her to present herself as his sister before Pharaoh in Egypt and King Abimelech in Gerar. These experiences tested not only the couple's trust, but also Sarah's faith in God's protection and justice. The geographical environment also profoundly influences the narrative. The landscapes vary between arid deserts, fertile oases, pasture fields, and walled cities. The nomadic life required constant adaptation, creativity to deal with scarcity, and courage to face natural and human dangers. Sarah learned to find beauty in small things. The freshness of water from a well, the shade of a tent in the heat, Abraham's laughter at an impossible promise. Daily life consisted of simple but essential tasks: preparing meals, caring for animals, keeping the tent in order, and welcoming visitors, a highly valued virtue in ancient Middle Eastern cultures. Sarah's faith was forged in this context of vulnerability and waiting. Over the years, she heard God's promises to Abraham: "I will make you into a great nation. All peoples on earth will be blessed through you." But time went by and reality seemed to contradict hope. With each new cycle, the absence of children was felt as an open wound, a reminder that the miracle had not yet come. The decision to give Hagar, her Egyptian servant, to Abraham to bear a child was born of this despair, but also of a human attempt to collaborate with the divine plan. Ishmael's birth brought joy, but also conflicts and tensions that cross generations. The biblical text reveals Sarah's emotional and spiritual nuances. She laughs at God's promise, not only out of disbelief, but because she faces the improbable, the absurd, the unbelievable. Her laughter is a mix of pain, relief, and hope. God, however, transforms this laughter into a sign of grace, giving Isaac a name that immortalizes the memory of that moment. Sarah's story is therefore deeply human, marked by doubts, attempts, failures, and new beginnings. She's not idealized as perfect, but presented as someone who learns to trust, even stumbling along the way. The Christian tradition sees Sarah as an example of persevering faith. The author of Hebrews highlights, "By faith, even Sarah herself received power to conceive, even beyond the proper time of life, since she considered him faithful who had promised." Her life is remembered not only for late motherhood, but for the ability to wait, to start over, and to celebrate God's faithfulness even when everything seemed lost. Thus, Sara becomes a symbol of hope for all who face long waits, postponed dreams, and promises that seem impossible. In the contemporary world, Sara's story invites reflection on the value of perseverance, trust, and the ability to start over. How often do we feel like strangers in our own lives, displaced by changes, losses, or unexpected challenges? In which areas do we need to learn to laugh again, to celebrate small victories, and to trust that God can still surprise us? Sara's example challenges each person to look beyond limitations, embrace vulnerability, and walk in faith, even when the path is uncertain. If this historical and cultural contextualization brought new insights to your life, share in the comments how you deal with waiting and challenges. Send this video to someone who needs renewed hope and subscribe to Bible in Colors to keep following stories that strengthen faith and perseverance. Sara and Abraham's life was marked by a routine of displacements, unexpected encounters, and decisions that required courage and trust. They crossed unknown lands, guided only by faith in a promise that seemed increasingly distant. At each new camp, Sara organized the tent, cared for the animals, prepared simple meals, and maintained hospitality, welcoming travelers and strangers generously, as was customary in her culture. Even with the weight of barrenness, she strove to maintain dignity and respect, both before Abraham and the nomadic community around them. The relationship between Sara and Abraham was one of complicity, but also of challenges and trials. In times of danger, such as when they went down to Egypt because of famine, Abraham asked Sara to say she was his sister, fearing for his life before Pharaoh. Sara's beauty, even at an advanced age, drew attention in the Egyptian court and later from King Abimelech in Gerar. In both situations, God intervened to protect Sara, showing that his promise was greater than any human threat. These episodes tested the couple's trust, but also revealed divine faithfulness amid uncertainties. Time went by, and the promise of a child became increasingly unlikely. Sara, already elderly, felt the weight of God's silence and frustrated expectations. It was in this context of waiting and vulnerability that she made a bold decision. She suggested that Abraham have a child with her Egyptian servant, Hagar. Ishmael's birth brought momentary joy, but also jealousy, rivalry, and suffering. Sara experienced the bitterness of comparison, the fear of losing her place, and the pain of seeing her dream realized differently than expected. Still, God did not abandon her. He visited Abraham again, reaffirming that the promise would be fulfilled through Sara, not another woman. The arrival of the three mysterious visitors at Abraham's camp under the trees of Mamre was a turning point. Sara, listening behind the tent, heard the renewed promise. About this time next year, Sara, your wife, will have a son. Sara's laughter, a mix of disbelief and longing, echoed in that sacred space. God, however, did not rebuke her harshly, but turned her laughter into prophecy. Isaac would be the son of promise, the laughter born from the impossible fulfilled. From that moment, hope gained new breath, and Sara began to await the miracle with an anxious but renewed heart. In the following months, Sara experienced a mix of fear, expectation, and joy. Every change in her body was a sign that God was at work, even when everything seemed late. Isaac's birth was celebrated with feasting, laughter, and tears. Sara, already elderly, held her son in her arms and declared, "God has brought me laughter, and everyone who hears about this will laugh with me." The miracle did not erase the marks of waiting, but gave new meaning to her story. Isaac grew up surrounded by love, and Sara could see in every step of her son the confirmation that God is faithful even when everything seems impossible. Living with Hagar and Ishmael continued to be a challenge. Sara, fearing for Isaac's future, asked Abraham to send Hagar and her son away. God instructed Abraham to listen to Sara, assuring him that he would also make a great nation from Ishmael. This episode reveals the complexity of Sarah's feelings. Joy at motherhood, pain at separation, desire to protect her son, and at the same time, trust in the divine promise. Sarah's life was not marked only by victories, but also by losses, difficult choices, and new beginnings. Sarah's relationship with God matured over the years. She learned to trust even when she did not understand the Lord's ways. Her faith was not perfect, but persevering. Sarah became a symbol of hope for all who face long waits, postponed dreams, and promises that seem distant. Her story shows that God does not forget his children, and that even in silence, he is preparing something new. If this chapter of Sarah's life spoke to your heart, share in the comments how you deal with waiting and challenges on your faith journey. Send this video to someone who needs hope, and subscribe to Bible in Colors to keep following stories that show the power of perseverance and trust in God. The arrival of Isaac brought new meaning to the lives of Sarah and Abraham, but it also revealed profound nuances of growth, healing, and transformation. The birth of the promised son did not erase the past, but redefined it, showing that waiting, pain, and even laughter of disbelief can be transformed into a testimony of faith and joy. Sarah, now a mother, experienced the fulfillment of an old dream, holding in her arms the realization of a promise that seemed impossible. Every smile from Isaac, every babbled word, every step taken was a living reminder that God is faithful, even when human time seems exhausted. Family life, however, was not without its challenges. The presence of Ishmael, son of Hagar, continued to provoke tensions and insecurities. Sarah, fearing for Isaac's safety and future, asked Abraham to send Hagar and her son away. This request, harsh and painful, reveals the complexity of Sarah's maternal feelings, the desire to protect, the fear of the unknown, the need to trust that God would take care of everyone. Abraham, reluctant, sought divine guidance and heard from God that he should heed Sarah's request, for he would also make a great nation from Ishmael. This moment of separation was marked by tears, prayers, and the certainty that even in difficult decisions, God remains present, caring for each one according to his purposes. Sarah, watching Isaac grow, was able to witness her son's development amid a nomadic life, surrounded by stories, teachings, and examples of faith. She saw Abraham teach Isaac about the one God, about the importance of obedience and trust, about gratitude and hospitality. Sarah, in turn, passed on to her son the strength of hope, the courage to wait, and the beauty of laughing even when everything seems impossible. The bond between mother and son was woven by memories of waiting, tears, and shared laughter. The climax of Sarah's story is revealed above all in the maturity of her faith. She learned to deal with losses, to start over after each disappointment, and to celebrate small victories in everyday life. Isaac's birth was the high point of a journey marked by ups and downs, but also by a trust that was built step by step. Sarah became a symbol of perseverance, showing that faith does not eliminate doubts, but transforms them into opportunities for growth. Her life teaches that miracles can happen when we least expect them, and that even in the face of the improbable, God remains faithful. The emotional impact of this climax is profound. Sarah, who once saw herself as forgotten, is now remembered as the mother of a great nation. Her story inspires women and men to believe that God's timing is different from ours, and that hope should never be abandoned. Sarah's laughter, once marked by disbelief, is now an echo of gratitude and celebration. She becomes a living witness that God fulfills what he promises, even when everything seems late. If this moment of great lessons and turning points touched your heart, share in the comments how you have experienced God's faithfulness in your life. Send this video to someone who needs to renew their hope, and subscribe to Bible in Colors to keep following stories that show the power of faith, perseverance, and divine grace. Sarah's cycle ends with a message of hope that crosses generations. Sarah's death, recorded in the scriptures, is not just the end of a life, but the closing of a story marked by faith, overcoming, and legacy. She died in Kiryat Arba, that is Hebron, at the age of 127, becoming the only woman in the Bible whose lifespan is precisely detailed. Abraham, deeply saddened, weeps and mourns for his companion of so many journeys. Sarah's burial is one of the most solemn moments in the narrative. Abraham negotiates with the Hittites to buy the cave of Machpelah, ensuring not only a dignified place for his wife, but also a symbol of possession and promise fulfilled in the land God had promised. Sarah's memory remains alive among her people. She is remembered as the matriarch who, even in the face of barrenness, old age, and doubts, did not give up waiting for the impossible. Her story is told around campfires, passed from mother to child, from generation to generation, as an example that God honors those who trust, even when everything seems contrary. Sarah's tomb in Machpelah becomes a reference for Abraham's descendants, a place of memory, respect, and renewal of faith vows. Abraham's destiny is also marked by transformation. He, who walked alongside Sarah through every desert, now experiences the loneliness of widowhood, but also the responsibility to ensure the future of the promise. Abraham seeks a wife for Isaac, not among neighboring peoples, but among his own relatives, preserving the family's identity and faith. Isaac's marriage to Rebekah is the continuation of Sarah's legacy, the certainty that God's promise lives on, passing from generation to generation. The great message of Sarah's story is that faith does not depend on circumstances, but on trust in a God who fulfills what he promises. Her life teaches that the wait may be long, that tears may last through the night, but that laughter and joy come at the right time. Sarah is remembered not only for being Isaac's mother, but for being the mother of all who learn to wait, trust, and start over. Her story is an invitation to hope, the courage not to give up, and the certainty that even when everything seems late, God can still surprise. Sarah's legacy remains an inspiration for women and men who face barrenness, losses, waiting, and seemingly insurmountable challenges. She shows that vulnerability is not a sign of weakness, but a space where God can act with grace and power. Sarah's story is an invitation for each person to look to the future with eyes of faith, remembering that today's impossible can become tomorrow's testimony. If the conclusion of Sarah's story spoke to your heart, share in the comments which lesson most marked your life and how you intend to apply it to your challenges. Send this video to someone who needs renewed hope and subscribe to Bible in Colors to keep following stories that strengthen faith and inspire perseverance. Sarah's story, although set in a distant time, remains deeply current and relevant for those facing challenges, waiting, and uncertainties. Her journey is an invitation to see life with new eyes, recognizing that faith is not the absence of doubts, but the courage to keep going even when everything seems impossible. In everyday life, many face situations where dreams seem delayed, answers take time to arrive, and the heart is filled with the feeling that time has already passed. Sarah teaches that hope can be cultivated even in the driest seasons, and that God continues to work behind the scenes, preparing the miracle in unexpected ways. Applying Sarah's teachings today means learning to value the process, not just the result. It is recognizing that every step of the journey has its value, that tears shed in waiting can water seeds of faith and maturity. In times of anxiety, Sarah inspires us to slow down, trust in God's timing, and realize that life is made of cycles, new beginnings, and surprises. Her story challenges the culture of haste and immediacy, showing that the true miracle often arises from silent perseverance and renewed trust each morning. Sarah's life also teaches us about the importance of dealing with difficult emotions. Envy, fear, jealousy, frustrations. She was not perfect but was honest about her pains and limitations. By acknowledging her weaknesses, Sara made room for God to act, turning her tears into laughter and her shame into testimony. In today's world, where comparison and pressure are constant, learning from Sara is an invitation to authenticity, to embracing our own vulnerabilities, and to seeking healing in God. Another practical aspect of Sara's story is the value of community and mutual support. Even in the loneliness of waiting, she walked alongside Abraham, shared dreams and challenges, sought advice and welcomed visitors. Her hospitality is an example of how small acts of care can strengthen bonds, renew hope, and transform environments. In a society marked by individualism, following Sara's example is opening one's heart to others, being a friendly presence, and building networks of support and solidarity. In the family environment, Sara inspires parents to pass on faith, hope, and resilience to new generations. The way she and Abraham raised Isaac, teaching him to trust God and value the family story, shows that the most precious legacy is built day by day with words, examples, and prayers. In times of uncertainty, Sara's story invites every family to strengthen their bonds, celebrate small achievements, and keep the flame of hope alive. If Sara's life brought inspiration to your journey, share in the comments how you intend to apply these lessons in your routine. Send this video to someone who needs hope and subscribe to Bible in Colors to keep receiving content that strengthens faith, perseverance, and trust in the God who makes all things new. Sara's story invites us to dive into a deep spirituality, where prayer becomes a bridge between our limitations and God's faithfulness. Throughout her life, Sara experienced silence, doubt, laughter of disbelief, and finally, the joy of the fulfilled promise. Her journey shows that faith is not linear, but marked by ups and downs, moments of waiting and celebration. Even when she did not understand God's ways, Sara learned to trust, to present her pains and hopes in prayer, and to open her heart to the new things God was preparing. At this moment, I invite you, inspired by Sara's journey, to take a moment of silence and prayer. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and allow yourself to stand before God with everything that weighs on your heart. Long waits, postponed dreams, doubts that persist. Remember that God hears every sigh, understands every tear, and knows the right time to act. Just like Sara, you can trust that even when everything seems late, the Lord is able to surprise and turn impossibilities into testimonies of joy. Pray with me. Eternal God, Father of promises and hope, just like Sara, we want to learn to trust in you even when the time seems long and answers distant. Give us faith to wait, courage to start over, and humility to recognize that your will is always best. May we laugh again, not at the impossible, but with the joy of seeing your work in our lives. Renew our hope, strengthen our perseverance, and make us living witnesses of your love. May Sara's story inspire every heart to pray, wait, and trust. Amen. If this prayer spoke to your heart, write your request or thanksgiving in the comments. Share this video with someone who needs renewed hope and subscribe to Bible in Colors to keep receiving content that feeds faith and inspires new journeys of prayer and trust in God. Sara's story finds its deepest expression in one of the most emblematic passages of the Old Testament, when God visits Abraham and renews the promise of a son for the couple already advanced in age. The text of Genesis 18:10-14 brings the moment when, in front of the tent, Sara hears the promise and laughs silently, doubting that she could still experience the joy of motherhood. Is anything too hard for the Lord? At the appointed time I will return to you according to the time of life, and Sara shall have a son. Sara's laughter, born of disbelief, is transformed by God into a sign of grace and redemption. The name Isaac, which means he laughs, immortalizes the moment when the impossible became reality. This passage reveals not only God's power to fulfill promises, but also Sarah's humanity, who, like all of us, wavers between faith and doubt. The biblical text does not hide her weaknesses, but makes them part of her testimony. Sarah's laughter is, at the same time, an expression of pain, hope, and surprise at God's faithfulness. God does not rebuke Sarah harshly, but invites her to trust. At the appointed time, Sarah will have a son. This promise is fulfilled, showing that God's timing is perfect, even when it defies our logic and expectations. Theologically, Sarah's story points to God's sovereignty and grace, who acts beyond human limitations. The Apostle Paul, in Romans 4 and Hebrews 11, recalls the example of Sarah and Abraham to illustrate that true faith is the one that perseveres, even when everything seems impossible. Sarah becomes a symbol for all who wait, who cry, who laugh nervously, but who, in the end, experience the miracle of divine faithfulness. Her life is an invitation to trust, to surrender, and to celebrate the God who turns tears into laughter. In today's context, this passage challenges each person to look at their own waiting and doubts with honesty and hope. How many times, faced with promises that seem distant, do we find ourselves laughing in disbelief or discouragement? Sarah's story shows that God is not offended by our weaknesses, but welcomes them and transforms them into opportunities for His grace to be manifested. The invitation is to trust, even when everything seems late, and to celebrate every small miracle as a sign of the Lord's love and care. If this rereading of the main biblical passage about Sarah brought light to your journey, share in the comments how you have experienced God's faithfulness amid doubts and waiting. Send this video to someone who needs renewed hope, and subscribe to Bible in Colors to keep deepening your faith and understanding of the Scriptures. Sarah's journey is an invitation for each person to look at their own life with honesty, courage, and hope. Her story shows us that it is not necessary to be perfect to experience great miracles, but rather to be willing to walk, even amid doubts and waiting. In times of haste, comparison, and anxiety, Sarah teaches that God's timing is different from ours, and that waiting, as painful as it may be, can produce fruits of maturity, gratitude, and renewed faith. Following Sarah's example today means learning to embrace your own limitations, to laugh at impossibilities, and to trust that God can act in surprising ways. It is recognizing that even when everything seems late, there is room for new beginnings, for old dreams to gain new life, and for hope to bloom where least expected. Sarah's life challenges each one not to give up in the face of challenges, to seek support in the community, to strengthen faith through prayer, listening, and sharing experiences. In daily life, applying Sarah's lessons may mean taking a step of courage in a difficult situation, asking for help when needed, celebrating small victories, and valuing the process, not just the result. It is also an invitation to look at others with compassion, to be a presence of welcome and hope for those living through times of waiting or disappointment. Sarah shows that vulnerability is not weakness, but a path to grace and transformation. If you feel it is time to renew your hope, share in the comments how Sarah's story inspires your journey. Send this video to someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe to Bible in Colors to keep receiving content that strengthens faith, perseverance, and trust in the God who makes all things new. At the end of this journey through Sarah's life, it is clear that her story is much more than an ancient account. It is an invitation to all who wish to renew hope, strengthen faith, and learn to wait for God's timing. Sarah reminds us that every tear, every doubt, and every laugh have their place in the walk of faith. Her journey shows that God does not forget those who trust, even when everything seems late or impossible. Sarah's legacy is the courage to start over, the willingness to laugh again, and the trust that the impossible can happen when we least expect it. If this series about Sara touched your heart, share in the comments which moment impacted your life the most and how you intend to apply these lessons in your daily life. Send this video to someone who needs renewed hope and subscribe to Bible in Colors so you don't miss the next episodes. In the next video, we will dive into the story of Deborah, another woman of faith, courage, and leadership who transformed the destiny of her people. Don't miss this new journey of inspiration and transformation.